Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in once again to China Manufacturing Decoded from the Sofeast Group. It's Adrian from the team here today discussing product return rates and how to control them. And I don't have our CEO Renaud with me today. Actually, I've got a special guest, Andrew Amirnovin, who is our head of new product development. How are you doing?
Doing well, Adrian. Good to be here again. We're trying to do something exciting. We have an exciting discussion today about return rate.
Yeah, return rates. I mean, it's not a good thing, and it's something that we're trying to avoid. So you're the man to give us the information about what they are and how we can put in place systems and processes to avoid them, or what to do if, unfortunately, products start getting returned by customers, which we want to avoid, but if it does happen, we need to take action. Before we launch into today's topic, what do you do for the group, please?
Well, I am the head of the new product development for Agilian and Sofeast. And currently, I am in charge of all the new products that we start with our new customers, basically. And we work with our new customers to make sure that we understand their new product requirements. And then we work with our team on the other side to make their basically product reality. And in doing so, of course, we have a 5-phase of product development system that really goes through the entire feasibility and assessment of the entire project, and we try to understand what it is that needs to be done and how we're going to achieve that goal.
And that's it, in the name of bringing a product to market with the best possible quality, reliability, safety, compliance.
Exactly. That really entails that we will not only do the entire design of the product in terms of mechanical and electrical design, and as well as manufacturing, and also engineering tests, reliability tests, compliance tests, electrostatics tests, or any other tests that are required to make sure that this product is going to be basically built correctly and delivered to end user.
And one of the things that we're trying to avoid is the situation where products do get returned. And there are different reasons, of course, which we'll get into. But to go into today's topic then, when we talk about a product return rate, could you just give a quick explanation? What are we talking about?
Well, we're definitely not talking about high return rate on your investment.
Right.
That is exactly the opposite of what we are talking about here. We're talking about high return product return rate, which is not a good thing when it comes to electronic manufacturing. Ideally, you want a zero return rate. But it's almost impossible in a world that we're living in. And there's always going to be some returns. We're just trying to find a way to minimize that. And return rate, product return really means any product that you sold and somehow for some reason, some or part of the product actually got returned. Customers didn't like it, and basically you're receiving the product back from the customers. Now, return rate itself means how many percent of those products that you sold is actually coming back to you.
Yeah, so you mentioned a percentage. So basically, we're looking at the units returned divided by the total amount sold and then multiplied by 100, and that's giving you the percentage return rate, right?
That is correct. That is how you calculate the basic return rate in order to understand exactly what kind of a return you're looking into. Like let's just say an example. For example, if you sold 15,000 units and 5,000 were returned, then you're looking at 33% return rate, which is huge.
That's it's not great.
Right. That's 1/3 of your product, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. But return rates can vary, right? So depending on the product type, we might expect a larger rate than others. You mentioned for today's consumer electronics, and I suppose, especially for higher quality or more expensive ones, ideally you're looking for as close to zero as possible. But other products, we might expect a higher return rate, right?
Exactly. Like in retail industry, for example, you know, I'm using the name Amazon as an example, but we don't exactly know what return rate they have. But retail industry, they could have return rates as high as 20%.
Hmm. Yeah, okay. Which sounds surprisingly high, but when you consider the enormous numbers of products sold on online marketplaces, wherever it might be, I guess that that's not actually shouldn't be so surprising.
It's true. It's true. In general, of course, from going one market to another, one market might be okay and acceptable to have high return rate. In another market, for example, if you've got a very high risk product such as heart monitor, you really
Hmm.
don't want any of those to be failing, and a high return rate on that could mean a lot of people, dying, and that's not a good thing necessarily.
Of course. Okay, so the figure of 20%, let's say, it sounds high, but if we now get into the causes of returns, it might be easier to understand why we do get that sort of return rate. Because if you're just thinking, wow, 20% of the products are getting returned because they're defective or, not good quality or something like that, yeah, that would probably be high, but actually, those are not the only reasons. And there are five reasons why consumers usually well, roughly about five reasons, right, that consumers return products.
Yeah, exactly. I would say five main reasons. I mean, there could
Yeah,
be
yeah,
a
yeah.
million reasons why people really return
Yeah.
or we get returns. But I would say a number one reason is really customer remorse. How many times you and I in our lifetime, at least maybe once, you have returned a product that just didn't like it for no apparent reason, you
Oh,
know?
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So that happens a lot with various customers. Then the next reason is gift return. You know, how many times you received a kind of a tie or something for Christmas and it just didn't go well with your
Yeah.
suit and you had to go either completely return it or change it. So that happens many
Mm.
times and it's totally normal. And I would say those two alone could be 10 to 20% of the returns. But then there is another situation has happened that I have seen in my experience is that dead on arrival products leave the production, passing all the final tests, perfectly operational, no issues whatsoever. And then they arrive at the customer site, and as soon as the end user opens it, plugs it in, and it's not working
Mm.
for no apparent reason. And we've talked about um, some of the reasons for dead on arrival, but a lot of times it's really kind of one of those mysteries for many engineering folks. You know, they try to figure it out, but because they haven't done the right due diligence early in the development, and then they end up having all kinds of problems with the DOA. Then, of course, there's
Mm.
another issue for the reasons is poor quality, and then of course the last one, poor reliability. So if you've got poor quality and poor reliability, then right there you could cause the other three, right? Customer remorse,
Mm.
gift returns, and DOA. So these five reasons kind of go hand in hand, and it's very important that you try to put a band-aid on these right at the beginning.
Yes, and you said a couple of interesting things just then. You mentioned because maybe a manufacturer didn't go through enough testing and validation during the product development process, which you mentioned at the top of the show as well. And also, you mentioned putting a band-aid on these potential causes right at the beginning. So when we talk about the beginning, really we're talking about before the product gets sold. So we're talking about during product development.
Absolutely. We're talking about during the MPI process, during the
Mm,
early product life cycle, when the design phase is going on, the development phase is going on,
yeah.
that's exactly the right time to
Mm.
make sure you think about return rate.
Yeah, so we're going to put in place some steps and actions to put in the groundwork to prevent a high return rate once the product starts getting into the hands of consumers. And once again, you've got a little list of points that we should be considering, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are at least 7 items that I think that you could be considering, and
Mm,
it sounds or seems a lot, but if you have a very well organized team and everyone is following what they're supposed to be doing, it's definitely entirely possible to do. And these 7, I consider them the 7 secrets of making sure that you end up with low return rate. The number
okay.
one is having quality design. This is absolutely a must. If you don't have a very good, well-designed product, you're automatically looking to have all kinds of problems everywhere in production, and even before actually goes into the field, and also post production. So quality design is absolutely a must.
Yeah, so I heard that they say that product design is responsible for around 70% of the costs of the whole project.
Yeah, I would say so, because of the fact that basically product design really is the skeleton of the whole, what you're trying to achieve in terms
Mm,
of quality, operational excellence, and customer requirements. And so there's a lot in there that needs to be right and done right, or else, yeah, you could be having all kinds of, basically, you could have a chain reaction of all kinds of issues.
Oh, I like that chain reaction. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Cool. Okay.
The next step will be sourcing quality components. A lot of people may forget and start looking at cheap, low quality components. But what they don't realize is that, for example, a product is a combination of a whole bunch of components, and even one component failing can really hinder the operation of the whole product. It can at least uh, minimize its functionality and or make the performance not so appealing. That could be like the least could hurt. But in the worst case, one component failing can just basically shut down the product. So it
Mm,
is essential that we source quality components that not only meet our design requirements, but also exceed quality requirements when it comes to design. If your design says that this is going to be operational between, let's say, 0 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit, I mean Celsius, then you want to make sure that your component is going to be able to handle a little bit colder than 0 degrees and a little bit warmer than 70 degrees, so that if there's a fluctuation just in the temperature alone, then the component can still handle it.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And this is kind of connected to the last episode with myself and Renault, and we were talking about why you shouldn't buy production parts from Taobao, and it's exactly because you can't guarantee, well, you're laughing, and this is exactly it. Most people would be like, Taobao, no, that's crazy. And the reason is because you can't guarantee that you're going to have components of the quality that's going to stand up to your demands, basically, to paraphrase it a lot. So yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, a lot of the, you know, let's say not so critical designs maybe a cheaper part is not a big deal or not a big
Hmm.
problem. But when it comes to critical designs, um, and products that must function exactly, and right within the specification, it's totally critical to choose components that are within the specification and have gone through thorough quality and reliability testing. And there's even some kind of basically documentation, test
Mm.
documentation and approval from the supplier that guarantees the component quality and reliability rate.
Yeah, yeah. Otherwise, you've got garbage in and then garbage out.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's one more
Okay.
other thing that I've seen happen a lot is optimum reliability and transportation testing. I think
Mm.
earlier on we talked about DOA, dead on arrival. A lot of times that happens because many companies do pretty much all kinds of tests to bring their product to production. And even at production, and sometimes even post production, they do all kinds of tests. But one test that they always forget to do is called ISTA 2A transportation testing.
Yeah.
And this is a very, very critical test for many products, especially if they are large and heavy type of products, because you put these products in a carton box and you're trying to ship those to your destination from long distances, like from China to US, for example, or Europe.
Mm.
And it's very likely that if you haven't tested your carton boxes, you have no idea whether those carton boxes can withstand certain humidity and not fall
Yeah.
apart, or even the weight of the products that are packed in there. And I have seen carton boxes that like just went from one destination to the next. And at the end of the destination, the guy is trying to lift it from the crate. Everything just fell out of the box.
Ugh.
And right there, you have lost some products that were inside a box that need to go through thorough testing before you can actually put them on the shelf.
Yeah, I mean, those might end up even being scrap. And previously there was nothing wrong with them. So yeah, that's a really good point to remember. Focus on the packaging and the transportation testing for sure. Okay.
Right. And then, of course, we talked about this before. Reliability testing is critical. And if you don't have optimum reliability testing, then and you miss, for example, how the end user is going to be um, testing or using the product in the worst case situation, there's a really good chance that the end user is going to basically break the product because they had no idea. They're using it the way they think that they should be using, but you didn't test it, so you didn't catch that issue. And then now you're looking into all kinds of high returns.
Mm.
Yeah, so I think that I would say number four is having quality manufacturing, and this is really critical. If you've got a manufacturing environment where your equipment are not calibrated properly, they're not tested properly, they're not operating properly, then you're looking at low yield and all kinds of failures at the end of the day. And this could really um, basically put havoc on your shipment schedules. And when these kind of situations happen, sometimes the not so knowledgeable manufacturing staff, they will be just close their eyes and pack the product, and they just want to ship. They just want to get it done. And so it's very, very important that you deal with a manufacturing contract manufacturing that totally has been audited and is
Mm.
ISO 9000 certified. And basically, they follow the QMS and total quality management system so that uh, at the end of the day, you trust the product coming out of that line.
Yeah, so the incentive really is on the quality of the product rather than getting paid as soon as possible.
Exactly, exactly. There's one more thing that I have noticed that some customers maybe lack of knowledge and not knowing about how the product should be tested, and or maybe they're trying to save on the cost, and that's called ongoing reliability testing, and or in short, ORT. Ongoing reliability testing
Mm.
is critical. At least the first, I would say the first 30 days is a must, but first 3 months, it's a good thing to do to make sure that your products leaving the production. I'm talking about your brand new products, not um, let's say a copy product, but I'm talking about
Yeah.
brand new product need to be going through this process. And what this ORT does is that basically screens and checks to make sure that the product that is leaving the production is exactly meeting the same reliability requirements that it was designed for.
Okay. There's another couple left.
Yeah, yeah. So outgoing QC, sometimes we call it OQC. This is outgoing quality control, is one of those important tasks in production line. This is critical for the integrity and quality of the products coming out of the line. If in for some reason, there aren't very good OQC system in place, where there are, let's say, quality control teams, quality control processes in place, and there's checks and balances. And sometimes, what they do at the end of the line when these products come out of the line, there is an AQL is done, which basically audits each batch of the production. And they want to make sure there's no quality issues before they release that batch to be joined to inventory. Yes, it's very, very important.
Yeah. Again, I can see how this fits in with the whole putting in groundwork before products get sold. So that's good. And one last one, number 7.
Yeah, I would say number 7 is also very important. And that is when you are a large manufacturer and you are producing huge amount of products daily, well, you have to store those products somewhere, at least maybe for a few days until they are shipped. And proper storage of those products, going through proper inventory system and humidity and temperature controlled storage system, and some kind of first in, first out. I'm sure you're familiar with that in terms
Yeah.
of making sure that products that get in and get out as soon as possible is very critical. If you don't have this kind of a storage management system that is taking care of the inventory, rotating the products and storing it in a properly ventilated, dry, I mean, I'm talking, maybe like 55% humidity, and in a controlled temperature where the temperature is not fluctuating, then that this is critical as well.
Yeah, and where we are in South China, I mean, and a lot of manufacturing happens there. It can get pretty warm in the summer and pretty humid, right? So if some of your key components could be damaged by that sort of weather, I guess when you're auditing your potential supplier, this is definitely something that you want to be looking at. But I wonder how many importers actually do know how their suppliers are storing components and whatnot.
You are so right. And that's why many companies hire our staff for doing audit and inspection of their suppliers or their manufacturing environments. We always get this kind of let's say, order from our customers that, hey, we've been dealing with a manufacturer in China, and we're worried about how they are running their storage or production. Can you help us? And so we send staff to that manufacturer that are trained well when it comes to manufacturing audit, and as well as knowing exactly how the product need to be stored properly, so that so that the specification and the integrity of the products don't change until they reach the destination.
Couldn't agree more. So those 7 points you've gone through, basically, if you want to make sure that you're going to get a low return rate on products, it'd be better if you can sort of tick those off with your own facility or your supplier and make sure that they are actually paying attention to them. So yeah, good. Now, that was what happens before products get sold. Okay. But there's another scenario I wanted to cover with you, Andrew, if I may. And this is kind of the worst case scenario. So let's imagine that we've already developed and produced our product and it's selling on the market, but unfortunately we start getting quite a few returns coming in. Ideally, we want to avoid this by putting in place the measures that you just discussed. But if this does happen, what can we do?
Yeah, good point. So yeah, ideally, we definitely want to avoid this last area. We want to make sure to save costs, because this whole 6 items that I'm going to mention here are very, very costly, to be honest. And pretty much is the reason why you shouldn't have high return rate. But okay, mistakes happen. And once in a while, you do have a product that just didn't do well, and you end up with high product return rate. So, okay, what are we going to do about it? Well, the first thing is you definitely need to form a sustaining team, or in some cases, if the product volume is return rate volume I'm talking about is very high, like in the olden days when you were producing mobile phones. I remember Nokia, for example, had a facility that just pretty much, it looked like a production environment. I'm talking about millions of phones per year were being returned to that facility. And they actually had to go through pretty much the entire 6 steps that I'm talking about here in order to handle that volume of returns. Now, not every manufacturer is going to go through this, but even if you have a small volume, some of these definitely is applicable to your situation. So first, definitely, as soon as you got these returns, let's say you got several hundred returns or several thousand returns, you need to triage them. Triage means basically, let's categorize and sort things out. What is wrong with this product? What is wrong with the other one? And, if you got a lot of the ones that have issues with, for example, you plug it in and it doesn't turn on, let's put all of those together so we can do a kind of a spreadsheet or some data in terms of how many of them, or what I call Pareto, how many of them have, for example, do not turn on issue, how many of them have broken cover issue, for example, how many of them battery exploded issue. So you need to have this kind of a categorizing so that not only you have a data, a Pareto, but then when you study the Pareto, you start really understanding what are the, for example, 20% that cause, 80% of the issues. And so do you want to attack those right away? And how you do that is you triage them. You decide that, okay, these are design related issues. These are manufacturing related issues. These are component and supplier related issues, and so on. And then you move to creating a team, typically called sustainability team. And then these teams, usually people or team members from design, team members from quality, team members from supply chain that deal with components and suppliers, and so on, and manufacturing, of course. And these team members each will take a piece of the task from this return rate, and they go and try and attack it and work together and come back to a meeting and then decide and determine what actions they recommend to take in order to be able to put a band-aid on this return rate. Then the next thing that happens after this, or what I recommend that needs to be done, is okay, you did the triage and you put together a sustainability team, and everyone from that team came back with contributions to what needs to be done to put a band-aid. Now you need to gather all these fixes and create a manufacturing lessons learned, or basically a lessons learned database, really. And the benefits of this lessons learned database is enormous. A lot of companies fail to do this, but really it's a combination of history of all kinds of things that happened. You could call it design history file. There are related design, the history of related issues with design, manufacturing related history issues, component related. It's all in there. And if you're creating a brand new product and all of a sudden you end up having an issue, if you go back to the lessons learned database, most likely you'll find the fix that actually fixed that. Or you'll know that, okay, we bought this component again and we shouldn't because it caused this problem from this supplier. So yeah, history, lessons learned history database is critical. And then the next step that I think everyone should do at this stage to prevent high return rate is once you've done all this, you need to make a new build. You need to put all the fixes and then go and produce again. And then in doing this, you need to monitor, okay, were those fixes all done and everything's passing? And then you need to ship this product, the last item, you need to ship this product and you need to monitor the field returns again and see, okay, we had, let's say the month of September, we had 20% return. What about September and then October? Do we have a lower return rate in October? What about November? What about December? And if you see the return rate the trending is going down, then it's a good sign.
Yeah, okay. I think what came to my mind when listening to you just then was maybe the example of cars, because I guess we've all been affected by car recalls during, the years that myself or a lot of the listeners have owned cars. I've had a couple of cars that had to go into the garage to have fixes done to them. And that would have been because the manufacturer, they've got this kind of system in place. They are updating their lessons learned database and they're saying, well, no, the fuel pump, for example, that one was not working well. So we've got to get these cars in, replace the fuel pump. And in future, on the next iteration of the model or whatever, we'll be using a different kind of fuel pump to solve the issue. Does that sort of ring true to you?
Yeah, it does. When it comes to car manufacturing and car reliability, or basically return, I think they call it recall, right? A huge recall. What comes to my mind that I can never forget was the airbag failures that happened a few years back. I don't know the name of the actual manufacturer, but it was a Japanese supplier of a component for the airbag that pretty much was in every single car in the world. And a lot of the companies didn't know of the problem with this airbag. So what would really happen, and maybe you can research that later and let me know. So the problem was that when there was an accident and the airbag actually deflated, then inflated, pardon me, and then a piece of that metal would actually break loose. and hit people in the brain and in the face
Yeah.
or head and actually kill them. It was a serious problem. Of course, you don't wish to be in an accident, but it does happen. An airbag's supposed to be protecting you from hitting your head, in the steering wheel or something. But here it is. The airbag was actually killing people. This was a very, very serious issue that I never forget.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it came to recalls. And I think that we
Mm.
have seen, I can also recall another one. I think it was one of the tire manufacturers. I'm not sure which one it was, that
Mm-hmm.
the tires actually were not reliable. And you can just imagine you're going, high speed, and all of a sudden your tire explodes. And people
Mm.
lose control, of course, and a lot of fatalities happen because of that.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah, that was a major recall as well.
Yeah, those are some good examples. I'll try and find a link to the Japanese airbag manufacturer. I've actually heard of that case myself. Yeah, I think maybe it was like in the 90s or something, but
Yes.
I don't recall right now. But
Yeah, same
yeah,
here.
I'll add a link to the show notes. I mean, a good note to end on is talking about reliability, which is exactly what you've been doing. And, for the Sofeast Group, you are Mr. Reliability. So I'm not surprised that that word has come up a lot during this particular podcast episode. Product reliability has got such a lot to do with returns, doesn't it? And a lot of the things that you've spoken about, yeah, also quality too, of course, but it all comes back to that new
Yeah,
product introduction process.
it does. It does. I think that at the end of the day, all of it comes back to a good design, good testing, and good manufacturing. And but you can't really go to manufacturing if you haven't done a good design, and you can't really have a good design and good manufacturing if you don't have good testing to identify what are the things that are going wrong. So reliability is pretty
Mm.
much crucial during the new product development, and that is one of the things that we emphasize in Agilian manufacturing. So we make sure in Agilian Tech that all the products that we design, they go through first, of course, engineering evaluation of the design itself. We do through thorough DFX, but as well as sometimes even test the components if necessary, and then
Mm.
we go through a very well optimized, well designed reliability test plan that actually mimics the user environment, but even more than that, we're talking about worst case scenario of how the user will be using that product. And then we try to find those issues early in the design and development and fix those, and then so that our products will be very reliable at the end.
Yeah, and not being returned.
And not being returned, exactly.
Yeah, that's the name of the game. Great.
Right.
So there you have it. That's been a really interesting introduction to what return rates are, product return rates, how we sort of control them before products go into mass production and then get into consumers' hands, and also what to do if the worst does happen and your products start getting returned, and starting with triaging and finding out what's going on, and then putting a fix in place, and then going from there with monitoring and seeing if you're actually successful. So, yeah, really interesting, Andrew. I've really loved doing this particular recording with you. Let's get you back on soon.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, let's do it again.
Great. Well, and to all the listeners, thanks for tuning in once again. More from myself, Renaud, and Andrew, and other special guests, I'm sure, soon. So we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you. Take care, Adrian.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast brought to you by the Sofeast Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com. That's SOFEAST.com to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review and share because it will really help others discover us too.